is what creates drama. In most parts of the world, seasonal rituals follow a common pattern. This is Hugh Nibley's thesis and methodology all the way. The rites originally performed by the community as a whole tend in time to be centered in a single representative individual, in other words, the king. The king undergoes temporary eclipse, they fight against the noxious powers, and then the king serves as the bridegroom in a sacred marriage. What the king does on the punctual plane, the god does on the durative plane. So, all the ceremonies performed by the king are transmuted through the medium of myth into deeds done by the god. This transmutation in turn gives rise to the idea that the king and the other performers of the seasonal rites are merely impersonating acts originally performed by the gods. This is the whole theme and point of Mircea Eliade's entire book, One Eternal Round. They reenact what happened at the original time. It's a very profound concept here. Let me go on and continue with Gaster. Wrap up with Gaster's idea. The seasonal pattern may be traced in many of the calendar festivals of the ancient Near East. The Akitu, that is the New Year festival of the Babylonians and Assyrians, and the New Year Day of Atonement, the Feast of Ingathering complex of the Israelites. It may be recognized also in Egypt and among the Hittites, and at least vestigially in the Asian mysteries of Attis. The whole idea of this seasonal pattern is profound. Gaster notes that the activities, the relationship of ritual and myth, since all of the ancient world participated in these things from time immemorial, he says. This on page, this is right on the opening of chapter 1, actually, on page 23. He says the activities fall into two main divisions here. The rites of kenosis, that is emptying, and the rites of plerosis, that is filling. The emptying, the dying, and the filling, and the renewing. This is the whole idea of the ancient symbolism of the revitalization of not only earth, but of men, animals, plants, earth, all of life. And the reason I emphasize this from Gaster's Thespis is because this is the exact principle. This is the whole pattern. This is the whole point of Nibley's discussion in his book Abraham in Egypt concerning the facsimiles, what they are showing, especially facsimile number 3. This is so profoundly important because he's approaching it as ancient ritual exactly as the ancients did. And that's why the explanation seems so odd to us, but in reality it really does fit in with the ancient paradigm, and that's what's crucial to realize. I just want you to be aware that it's not Nibley desperately looking for something, anything. Oh my gosh, I have to save the Book of Abraham any way I can. No, that's not what he's doing at all. He's saying, look, the ancients had a specific type and way of pattern. Does this fit or does it not? Well, in order to see if it fits, you have to explore a broad range of activities, just like Gaster did in his book Thespis. Hey, this thing is a whopping 500 pages, 512 pages. It is a gigantic book where he talks about the ancient Near Eastern myths, the seasonal myths of the Mesopotamians, the Hittites, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Canaanitish materials, the Ugaritic materials. He is astoundingly conclusive and inclusive of all of the ancient cultures in these parallels. Not because he's desperate, but he says in order to see the pattern, of course, you have to have enough data. If you don't have enough data, in our modern statistical studies, you can't get the pattern of the bell curve. You can't even see what's happening. When you get enough data gathered together, then the bell curve occurs. Yes? This is the same principle, the same idea. Not that we're looking for the bell curve, but this idea of the ancient rituals and patterns. This is what Nibley meant when he said in the hierocentric state. He said from all over the ancient times, from all over the old world, I'm trying to get to it here, it's right at the opening. He says, the Panegyrist, the great assembly of the entire race, participates in solemn rites essential to the continuance of its corporate and individual well-being. This is precisely what Gaster said in Thespis. This is exactly this idea of the assemblies. They discuss the moment of creation, the beginning and ending of time, where vast concourses of people, each thought to represent the entire human race, is in the presence of all its ancestors and gods. This is on page 99 of the Ancient State. The main event, the now famous ritual year drama for the glorification of the king. The king wages combat with his dark adversary of the underworld. He emerges victorious with a temporary defeat from his duel with death, and therefore he is acclaimed in a single mighty chorus as the worthy and recognized ruler of the new age. See, the new year was the birthday of the human race. This is the idea. The meeting place, of course, was a mound, a holy mound or a temple. This is the hierocentric, the centralized state, the centralized meeting. In Sparsionis, the essential essence of the Sparsio was the giving of all good gifts from the god to the people. This is the Sparsionis, and these tokens, these were symbolic of life, health, strength, and abundance, and they were exchangeable as far as that goes. They were given by the king or his counterpart, the emperor, the magistrate, or the paterfamilias, and he is the living representative of the father and the founder of the race. Okay. It was scattered like seed or rain from a celestial station in a manner to stimulate and simulate the sowing of the race itself on the day of creation. That's on page 164 of his article on Sparsionis in the Book of the Ancient State. Well, this idea, the whole point of all of this material is, this is the same principle being depicted in our facsimile number 3 in the Book of Abraham, of all things. It's utterly astonishing that the pattern emerges here. The whole idea is the coming together of the kings and the commoners. It is the mass gathering. It is the connection of gods and men of high station with the lowliest of men, which is in the facsimile number 3, is depicted as such in facsimile number 3. Now, Nibley points out, over a century ago, Edward Neville observes that there's nothing harder than to recognize the distinctive marks of each individual deity in an Egyptian picture, because every divinity has specific emblems. See, these are like ideograms of his particular qualities to show you what the deity is capable of, so to speak. And these are swapped around all over the place. There is no singular individual characteristic totally other in each deity without being intermingled with either deities or humans as far as that goes. It is fascinating how there is an equating and equalizing and interpenetrating of names and forms and functions and powers, and this gets rather confusing, absolutely, and they show this time and again. The common basic nature, this is the mark of the Egyptian gods. Jan Bergman defines the process as one of proximity, or even association, or fusion, and finally, complete identification. Now, the reason I bring this up, this idea, freely being identified with the king, the individuals in our facsimile number 1, Joseph Smith says Abraham on the throne. But yet it's Osiris. Yes, this idea of being identified with the king or with the sun god, actually, the identification can occur with any of the different Egyptian deities. And it is an all-embracing divine power. It is the